with something that matters, whether Donald Trump wants you to know about it or not. Food assistance in the United States is now about to expire tonight because of a government shutdown. And while this is not the first time we've heard parties blame each other for the shutdown, and this has happened before. Donald Trump is not uniquely unprecedented in presiding over one. It is a fact that the Republicans control the White House and Congress. And it's also a fact that Donald Trump promised, above all else last year when he was campaigning, to improve people's daily lives, prices, groceries, food, basic stuff. And maybe he was effective on the messaging, but it is now also a fact that he is failing on delivering the results. And what does failure look like? Remember, there are still rules in this country. There's still some emergency mechanisms. When we say there's a government shutdown, it affects a lot of people, but it doesn't mean the federal government stops doing anything. And the courts are still open, of course, which brings us to the news late tonight. A federal judge in Rhode Island ordering President Trump to go forward and release the funds which are available for food assistance next month. So a November's worth of funding for what they call SNAP. Because the judge says that's necessary and available, the funds exist, and Trump, for some reason, didn't see people going hungry as an emergency enough reason to free up those funds. Now, here's exactly what the judge said in the ruling. There's no doubt that the $6 billion in contingency funds are appropriated funds that are, without a doubt, necessary to carry out the program's operation. Again, as I mentioned, some things get paused in a shutdown, but here the money's available, and hungry children are not the first thing that under law the Congress wanted to be sacrificed, even when there is a shutdown of part of the government. Another judge in Boston found the administration's suspension of those benefits is probably unlawful. They said likely unlawful. They are still weighing a final ruling over there. Now, this matters to 40 million Americans. Food pantries are seeing huge demand. We are here on a holiday evening. Republicans control the Congress and the White House. And there are many ways to respond to this. For example, you could say, this is bad, but we need to reopen the government. Or this is regrettable. Let's all come back to Washington and try to fix it. But that's not exactly the main response we're hearing. Again, we just do the news. We'll just tell you what they're saying, right? A House Republican said the people on food assistance who haven't pre-saved groceries are basically smoking crack, and they should stop. J.D. Vance had this to say.
We're going to find out the hard way with SNAP benefits. The American people are already suffering, and the suffering is going to get a lot worse.
The suffering is going to get worse, he says. 24 million Americans are also looking at what could be higher healthcare prices because Obamacare's marketplace reopens tomorrow. Premiums could more than double going through next year. That's on average. And the reason is government policy. Republicans won, and they are exercising their power to cut the funds that subsidize that. So that's the direct result. Now, when you ask the public, how's this going right now? People do not like the shutdown. Nobody likes higher healthcare prices. You don't really need a poll for that. But the most recent polling shows more people are blaming Trump and the Republicans for this shutdown right now as opposed to the Democrats. And I can tell you again, calling it straight, we've seen a lot of shutdowns where there is blame to go around. But this time, you do have one-party control of Congress and the White House. The Democrats' condition, the main thing they wanted was to keep those health care costs affordable, which also is pretty popular. Nationwide, we're seeing the reaction.
We're about to lose our food stamps. Mind you, we both work.
My son won't have his milk, and we won't have food.
I did everything right. Everything right. I was in the Army.
I'll go without eating it or anything as long as my kids eat.
Over 4 million people are going to lose their health care through the marketplace.
There's 4 of y'all. It's not feasible. We don't know how long this is going to last.
Some of the real people affected, the real voices out in real America tonight. It is a holiday. We're going into the weekend, but a lot of people are not able to enjoy it carefree because of the failure of this president and this Congress to keep the government open. I want to bring in Juanita Tolliver, Democratic strategist, author, host of the Archival podcast. Welcome, Juanita. Happy Halloween. You see there a kind of Republican anger or even threat it's going to get worse, is sort of their messaging. And I understand that in shutdowns, the blame can go around. I mean, so many things are unusual in the Trump era. This actually isn't. We've seen this before. But there doesn't seem to be any great empathy or concern about fixing it against that polling. How does this all play out in your view?
Ari, I appreciate you defining what J.D. Vance said as a potential threat, because based on the reporting, it's been clear that this contingency fund was earmarked by the USDA before the shutdown began as a resource to continue to provide SNAP benefits during the shutdown. That $6 billion was there. I appreciate the judge in Rhode Island saying the Trump administration made an erroneous decision to not use those funds to continue to supply SNAP. And calling that out emphasizes that this crisis is effectively manufactured by Trump and Republicans' decisions to not proactively engage and use those emergency resources that were already earmarked by the USDA. I think emphasizing that for the people, especially the people that you just highlighted, emphasizing the very real impact this means for them, missing meals, for their children not to have the milk that they need. It highlights the human face and impact of the 42 million people that will stand to be hurt at a moment when the losses feel compounded, Ari, because people were already struggling to pay for their groceries each month. People were already turning to credit cards more. I think back in March, it was announced that even collaborations like buy now, pay later between Klarna and DoorDash were introduced because access to food has long been an issue for people to be able to pay from their accounts regularly. And so this response to SNAP, with J.D. Vance saying it will get worse, that pain, I don't think, can be understated at all, because it's not something that food banks can just backfill. They cannot meet the response of the need that's going to be presented when these benefits might not be there on cards that people are typically expecting every single month at the beginning of the month.
Yeah, that makes sense. We're headed into November. We've got, of course, Thanksgiving's the largest travel day of the year next month. But air travel has been taking a hit under the same shutdown effects. Airports have grounded flights, shutdowns, air traffic control safety issues, staffing shortages. Workers want a deal to reopen the government, and they want to be fairly paid.
Air traffic controllers have worked over 120 hours now with no pay.
I'm a real person, and this is very, very, very difficult.
You know, effective today, every air traffic controller across the country wakes up to a paycheck that says $0.00.
Our elected officials need to come together. They need to find a way to reopen this government, and it needs to be done today. We don't need to wait to see how long our air traffic controllers can last without money.
Juanita, I don't want to be unfair, and I don't want to hate, certainly not on a holiday. I don't want to hate on this or that airline. But the reason that we've always had the federal government involved in airline safety is everyone feels a little better in the air having our taxpayer-supported experts, supposed to be nonpartisan government officials, doing safety rather than some company that might cut a corner. That's why we have federal air traffic control. And yet here we are, I don't want to say cutting corners, but certainly putting the pressure on those people to work for nothing and keep us safe while we have our fingers crossed. Is this any way to run the government?
Absolutely not, Ari. And what I recall from the 2018 government shutdown under Donald Trump is that it was air traffic controllers and airline employees banding together to demand their pay that stopped that shutdown. And so I'm anticipating what it's going to look like in airports. And I'm not even sure if it'll have to wait until Thanksgiving, another 25, 26 days from now, for them to start to take that action. There have been more reports of increased call-outs. There have been more reports of people not coming on shifts. And they have good reason to not show up when they're not getting paid. And so I know that Donald Trump had spent the first part of this year really working to denigrate the faceless individuals who run operations within the government, including these air traffic controllers. And I'm glad that they're speaking out, making it clear that they're real people, making it clear that they too have bills to pay, that their services will not be rendered indefinitely for free. And so I'm looking to see how they organize like they did in 2018.
And, you know, people talk a lot of trash about the government or the DMV or this or that. I don't know many people who say, you know what, we don't need anybody doing airplane safety. We don't need anybody checking on it. Let's just fly blind, you know, literally. I want to show you something, Juanita, about where the buck stops. Because I've mentioned there's a debate here in the shutdown, and that happens. But whether you put it all on the opposition party or the majority party or the White House, here's what Donald Trump said the shutdowns always boil down to back before he was in office. Take a look.
If there is a shutdown, I think it would be a tremendously negative mark on the President of the United States. He's the one that has to get people together. I would get everybody together and we'd have a budget. And they've all gotten together. Well, that's because they don't have the right leader. You don't have the right leader. This is the President of the United States has to get this done.